Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 54. We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
And welcome back to Let's Be Well Together. It's Sammy and John here for another episode. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. So you always ask how I'm doing.
I always do. I don't know. It just feels right to start the show asking how you're doing.
Well, Sammy cares about me.
Yeah.
Now, today I want to talk about this social media post we found on Instagram on Mind Body Green. Mm-hmm. And it's 5 tips for a healthier you and planet. Mm-hmm. Somehow I left aside talking about environmental stuff a lot in our What's on Your Minds. And the environment is really important to me. Yeah. And the good news is I am starting to line up some interviews. So hopefully we'll start to get at least a couple on the environment. Yeah. So can we just read through these 5 tips and then, like we often do, we'll chat about 1 or 2? And
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Do you want to do the first one?
Sure. So it's aim to eat at least 5 cups of fruits and vegetables per day.
Number 2, prioritize whole plant-based protein.
Number 3, choose brands that are siding with the planet.
Number 4, buy in season, locally and organic when you can.
And number 5, avoid highly and ultra-processed foods.
Right. So now this is talking about both you and the planet. Mm-hmm. A lot of these I see as more focused on your health. Yeah. But sure, why not try and help the planet while you're doing that?
Definitely.
Now, just when I was chatting with you off tape about this, you said something I thought was really interesting. So why don't I just let you go with that?
Yeah, sure. So I obviously, I care about the planet a lot. I love it. I look at this and I really want to do all of that. But I think some people tend to forget maybe when they put this out there that it's really expensive to eat super healthy, right? Like there is a reason, this is what I was saying before, there's a reason why people, specifically I'd say like in North America, choose to go and buy processed takeout versus healthy vegetables because, you know, an avocado costs $6 and same with a Happy Meal, right? So it's kind of like, I find I do eat pretty healthy and I really try to. But even when it comes to making sure that it's brands that are siding with the planet or organic brands, like when you look at organic eggs versus regular, not organic eggs, like I want to get the organic ones, but I can't afford it. So
they're really expensive.
It's really expensive. So I think that's something that we also have to keep in mind for people as like not everybody has, I guess, ability to spend that much money. And not even myself, like I wouldn't say I'm not able to afford some like good things, specifically some of this stuff for the planet and for myself. But, you know, there are some families and people that just, they can't even, afford that. So I think it's important to keep in mind as well.
I think I remember reading a year or 2 ago too. It's not just here. I was reading in places like, I think it was India and some African countries, obesity is becoming a major problem because people who don't have much money cannot afford healthy food, so they're forced to buy processed food. They're eating out of boxes and that kind of stuff. So I think this is something that travels the globe. It's not just here. Yeah,
I agree. And even, I won't like name the specific companies, but you know, there's some grocery stores that are all supporting local and I love them. I go to them and I spend about the same amount there getting like 5 things that I would spend at like a big box grocery store where I know the food's not as healthy and good for the environment as it is when I'm like supporting locally. But, you know, I kind of have to pick and choose where I can spend my money, right?
For sure. That's life. Budgeting. Making trade-offs, figuring out. Definitely. And just before I kind of throw my 2 cents in, there's another way where a lot of people can't afford this, which is time. So first of all, a lot of people don't know how to cook. And so they have to learn. And then secondly, it's just, there's just not enough time in the day for people to do stuff. Like, I don't know what I would do without Sheila. She tends to do all the prepping and cooking most of the healthy food.
Yeah.
Like she makes so much salad every day. By the way, she curses it all the time.
Oh.
I hate making salad, but she does it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it takes time to plan meals, to
does.
buy the food, to cook the meals. And so between money and time, people are not eating as healthy as they could be.
Definitely. Yeah.
Now, my 2 cents is that people, if you have to choose where you're spending your money and your time, this is where you should spend money and time.
Yeah, for sure.
Sheila and I were really young. So we got married very young. Let's see, I'm just trying to think. So Sheila was pregnant soon after we got married. So she had her first child when she was 20.
Oh, wow.
And I was 24, I think. We were both students. We had zero money, right? So people would ask, wow, what are you guys going to do? How can you afford a baby? And we were usually the kind of people that were just like, look, this is what we have to deal with today. We're going to deal with it. Yeah. And we always found a way to find the money, even though we didn't have a lot. So why am I talking about that? Because it's the same with food, right? So yeah, it's more expensive to get the local stuff sometimes. Yes, it's more expensive to eat healthy. Yes, it takes time. But one of the main themes I'm trying to put forward in this podcast is that your physical health is central to everything.
Definitely.
So if you have to start making trade-offs, can't you find something else to trade off so you can eat healthy? Yeah. And that's up to you to think about, not you personally. Like whoever's listening, that's up to you. But that's my pitch.
Yeah. And that's actually something that reminds me of. So me and David might not be local, but we started doing HelloFresh boxes. And that was something for people, like how you said, like they don't know how to cook or, don't have the time. I find like HelloFresh really cuts your time in half when you're cooking, and you don't have to always be creative. You don't have to be the one thinking of what you have to get, what do you have to go to the grocery store for. And I actually found it a lot cheaper because we would get boxes that would create, 3 different meals for 4 servings.
Oh, wow.
So we would both have dinner and then we'd have it for lunch, and then it would feed us for like the full week. So it's really like we only had to go out and buy breakfast stuff. And I think we're definitely going to go back to that. And then they also give you the full recipe. So we have like a couple recipes that we really liked and we kept them. So then if there was one day and we were like, oh, we don't know what to make, we could just pull out our card, go to the grocery store, buy those ingredients, and then make the HelloFresh at home. So I think that's also a really good way to start to get cooking. And,
I love it.
Yeah.
And then Sheila and I think at one point a long time ago, talked about if you can even teach yourself a basic like 6 meals, like 6 simple meals, So one is a protein like a chicken with, say, rice and vegetables. That's a staple. Yeah. We like making tortillas here, so some ground beef, some chicken, and the toppings. Yeah. And I can't remember them all, but there's like 6 or 7 that are kind of our go-tos. Yeah. And so once you know that, then it's a lot easier. And I love the HelloFresh one too. You get something, you walk through it, you get good at it. Yeah. So yeah, and maybe there is a way to save, but it's gonna cost you time to save money.
Definitely.
Because you're gonna have to plan out the economical way. And by the way, I mean, one other thing is I've been making bread since COVID started, and it cost me less than $1 to make a big loaf of bread.
And it's delicious.
And it's good. We're not buying other stuff. And now I got to the point where I'm kind of crazy now. We can't eat it all. Right. So what's left, I make croutons and crackers out of. Yeah, perfect. So now we're saving money there too, and we're eating healthy. So I guess the one thing I'd end with though is remember number 5 on this list too. So I get it. Not everybody can go immediately to totally natural food, avoiding processed food and time, but please have a really good look and avoid highly and ultra processed food. Yeah. Like the less processed, the better. There's processed food and then there's ultra processed. Read about it, learn about it, because there are a lot of studies saying that you increase health risks significantly by eating ultra processed foods. Okay, well, that was our first run at an environmental social media post. Yeah. I liked it.
There we go.
Guests are giving their time. Expanding our minds. Instead of talking about a category of wellness tonight, today's interview is loosely in the area of balance. I connected with some University of Waterloo students at a recent event, and I asked to speak to some of them to get a better sense of things students are faced with these days while seeking balance. And today's is the first of a few interviews. I'm here with Isabelle Sinclair, who joined us for a Move That Body a while back. Welcome back, Isabelle.
Hi, it's nice to be here again.
So Isabelle is a third-year student at the University of Waterloo, double majoring in English literature and legal studies. She's studying in the co-op program, and this term, Isabelle is currently working as a junior policy analyst for Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. In her free time, she enjoys reading, running, and traveling anywhere she can. So today, Isabelle, just remember in answering your questions, you only need to speak for yourself. We're not asking you to represent all university students. I'll be speaking to another student about things she's balancing. I'd like to ask you about stressors at university, the things that can cause stress as opposed to listening to the things you do. I'll just let you start where you want on what are some of the stressors you experience at university these days?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say as a university student, there's obviously stress in every situation you're in. In my particular case, I would say that grades are very high up there in my stressors personally, just because I'm someone who compares myself to my peers, my friends. It's something that really stresses me out in terms of future job prospects, having my transcripts given to employers in the co-op stream. I always pride myself on doing the best that I possibly can. So when a number on a paper doesn't reflect that, it tends to upset me a lot. Another stressor I would say that really poses a lot of difficult emotions for me is co-op placements. So as a student in the co-op stream at the University of Waterloo, we have about 4 months to find a co-op. However, these are split into different cycles, and oftentimes students will get placed in the first cycle. So when a student is rejected, such as I have been in the past, it can hurt the ego a bit.
Isabelle, can I just ask you a question about that? You're in co-op, right?
Yes.
Do you have like a guaranteed spot, but you don't have a guarantee of where you work? Or what you're saying is you may not get placed in a year?
Yes. So as a co-op student, you do have a guaranteed spot to get a position. However, the way that the system works on Waterloo works is that there are up to 5 cycles, and these cycles could last anywhere from a week to 3 weeks. To put in your application, do the interview, and either get accepted or rejected. As the cycles go on, so does your academic term. If you don't get accepted in the first cycle, you may or may not get accepted until the 5th cycle. So that coincides with academic scheduling. So it poses more stress, and you have to continue to maintain your efforts in applying to up to 100 job openings in one cycle. So it does pose a lot of stress in my life during these co-op streams. And I feel like it really impacts my schooling when times get rough in the co-op cycle. However, everything ends up working out. It's just, if you don't get placed in, I would say, the first 3 cycles, you have to start placing more of an emphasis on your schooling or your co-op job. So it can really stress people out, myself included. So
what I'm hearing you saying is that there's these different cycles in the year. And yes, if you get placed, for example, in the first cycle, then I got a placement, and now I just focus on school. But
yes,
if you don't get placed in the first one, you've taken all the time to do the applying during the first one, and now you have to do the same thing in the second cycle.
Yes, that's exactly how it works. So it's a big game of how you rank employers and how employers rank you. And that's one thing I didn't mention. After each respective cycle, employers can rank you. However, students can't see what they rank you until the day that you have to rank your employers. So if you don't rank each other a 1, chances are that you won't match, and you're going to have to move on to the next cycle. So it's a big game of numbers and chances, which obviously doesn't help students. It's a very difficult game to play sometimes.
Wow. And if you have a guaranteed spot, will it be something you definitely want to do? Or if you don't get placed, say, in the first 3 or 4 cycles, now you're just stuck with whatever's available?
Yeah, in the first 3 or 4 cycles, I would say there's more diversified job openings. But once you get to the 5th cycle, it's kind of, you either take the job or you leave the co-op stream. So it's, you gotta pick your poison in a sense.
Okay, so marks are stressors and finding co-op placement are stressors. Yes. Are there other school stressors?
I would say it kind of plays into academics, but it's kind of on a personal level as well. I find that I'm someone that compares myself to others, whether it be on LinkedIn, even grades, or feeling behind in the sense that I'm not doing enough to make my resume strong compared to other future candidates who are now students. I feel like during COVID, with everything online, connecting with other students was very difficult. However, I was able to connect with students on LinkedIn. And I think that oftentimes LinkedIn could be quite toxic in the sense that it's very easy to compare yourself to others in terms of experience, volunteering, and just mentorships as well. So I would say that that's another big stressor of mine. Even though I feel confident in myself, oftentimes when I could get down on myself and I look at LinkedIn, it just makes me feel like I could always do more in a sense. So I would say the grinding mentality of students, including myself, can be very toxic at times.
Yeah, part of the reason I'm asking these questions is because I'm hoping that when people listen, especially other university students, they'll hear that the things that they're getting stressed about, that other people are as well. It's not just them. That's an interesting one. Now, I usually hear that discussion with younger people in the context of social media. So it's interesting to hear it in the context of LinkedIn, which is something that I also use. Yeah. Do you find that you're also getting stressed from other social media sources, or is it mostly LinkedIn?
Definitely. I would say social media is so subjective and people don't often understand, but it's used as a highlight reel. People don't put the worst moments of their lives on social media for their thousands of followers to see. So I think it can also be equally or even more so toxic because it's more on a personal level compared to a professional level. You see people traveling, you see people pursuing their goals halfway across the world. You see people looking all prim and fresh to their best of their abilities. I wouldn't say it necessarily shows people's true colors, which can be misleading and can make people feel a certain way if it's not mitigated properly. So yeah, I would say social media is also a big stressor.
Normally in these interviews, I'm very neutral. I don't usually get up on a soapbox, but every once in a while I get on a little soapbox. Yeah. And so a couple points on today's interview. So first of all, I don't know what the approach is with social media. We've talked a little bit in the past between me and co-host Sammy about maybe we should just start being more honest about good days and bad days. Mm-hmm. And just by coincidence, yesterday I put up a little story on Instagram that basically said, I'm not having a good day. You know, there's something I'm thinking about that I regret and I wish I could go back, but I can't. So I'm going to try and focus on the fact that I can't go back in history, but I can only move forward. Yeah. So I do think if more people were honest, that might be nice. And second, these interviews with the university students, it's really interesting because like you guys are the cream of the crop from the high schools from all over the place, right? And yet what we hear time and again is how you're feeling, oh no, I don't compare and everyone else is doing so much more than me. And it's, I look at you and I see the things you're accomplishing and I'm amazed by them, but you can't see it from my eyes. So I don't know what the answer is, but just to say that it's nice of you to share. And I just wish a lot of the university students would know that other people looking at that same person sees a lot of upside where you're having a hard time seeing that.
Yeah, I guess I would say that life is all about perspective, not to get too existential here, but the way you see yourself compared to someone else, you won't see the same things. So I think it's just about, keeping yourself humble, staying down to earth, and just remembering that everyone sees things differently and interprets things differently. And I think that's a very important point to remember in tough times, I would say.
Okay, well, we're running a bit low on time, but I don't want to stop yet on the stressors before I turn to asking you about how maybe you navigate them in some ways. What about other things? I'm just going to give kind of a laundry list of things like family and social life and physical exercise and mental health. Are there any kind of stressors that jump out in those areas?
For sure. I think the list can go on and on as a student, but for myself, so my hometown is in Niagara in Ontario, and I go to school in Waterloo, so it's about an hour and a half away. I don't often get to see my family when I'm at school on an academic term, but I would definitely say it brings about moments of stress in my personal life. Not being able to lean on them would definitely be a point. Going to my mom for a hug when I'm upset definitely is something that I miss when I'm up there. I would also say money could also be a stressor of mine as well. I'm very grateful that I get OSAP, so that's a big help. But oftentimes when I have to decide if I want food or I need to pay rent, that can be very difficult. It doesn't usually get down to that point, and I have family to, yeah.
I was just going to say that for people who don't know, OSAP is assistance from the government, right?
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. I just, when I hear acronyms, I like to explain them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so OSAP, it's money that I get right now, but I have to pay off eventually. So basically just a student loan. But yeah, money and missing my family is definitely added stress.
We've heard about some of the stressors, and I'm sure there's many more. We won't be able to get through all of them, but what are some of the kind of the overview of some of the approaches you take to try and navigate the stressors?
For sure. I would say, going back to the whole perspective point, I'm 20 years old currently, and in times when things get difficult, I like to bring myself back down to earth and just remind myself that I'm a 20-year-old girl navigating school and life, and that I don't need to have everything figured out right now. And that university is all about finding myself, in a sense, finding what I value over other things and what I want to accomplish. So I find that people need to go through the ups and downs of life to really figure out who they are and how they're going to place themselves in the future. So as tough as it can get and as challenging as it can get, I really think that the tough times I go through are just going to make me a better person and more resilient, which is going to transfer in life skills and just positive outcomes. If I can survive this turbulent time, I feel like I can survive anything. So just keeping it all in perspective and not getting too existential.
I studied philosophy, so I like to get existential sometimes.
Oh, of course.
I like to drop that word at parties. And
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's been amazing. Really, that was really eloquent the way you put it. And I'm glad you can find those ways through some of the stressors. So good for you.
Thank you so much.
I actually ask every guest the same question at the end of an interview. And so I'm going to ask you. And Perfect. It's in the context where I'm working on a theory where we have all these different areas of wellness in our life.
Okay.
We don't have enough time to devote to all of them at any given time. So it's not surprising that one of them falls by the wayside. It's like a mini wellness check-in, okay? Here's the question. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one activity you can do to foster wellness in that area?
That's a great question. Currently, I'm on my co-op term, so I work 9 to 5, and I feel like a part of my wellness that I'm neglecting is definitely my physical wellness. Lately, I've been finding a lack of motivation getting up in the morning like I usually do to work out. So I feel like to mitigate my lack of exercise, I can find even 20 minutes a day to either go for a run or even a walk. Like a brisk walk, I think would be very helpful. And it's only 20 minutes. So I think I'm really going to start prioritizing my physical health despite being tired after work. But with wellness, you need to hit every border of wellness to be your best self. So I think just taking 20 minutes out of my day would be very beneficial.
It's very coincidental. And both in my book and on the podcast, I talk about this, what I call a magical cycle. And it kind of goes like this. I got in shape after not being in shape, and somebody told me that they were inspired to therefore start working out and get in shape themselves. And then for whatever reason, I kind of fell off for a little while, and I bumped into that same person, and they had made a lot of progress. And when I talked to them, I was re-inspired to get back to it again. And the reason I mention that is because when you talked to me on Move That Body, you were one of a few people who talked about the early morning workout. And after I talked to you, a couple of weeks later, I started the early morning workout. And it's making a big difference in my life. I'm going to the gym before work, and like you, I feel like, you start the day with a success and it feels great.
For sure.
And so now I'm doing that when you're not. So maybe this is a full
circle moment.
Maybe the magical cycle will work. And now that you've talked again about this and you answered that question, maybe you will be able to get out for some brisk walks and get re-inspired. And then maybe 3 months from now, you'll inspire someone else or me again.
Yes, I love it. You've inspired me to better myself and keep myself accountable. So I really think this full circle is going to work in both of our favors.
Love the magical cycle. Okay, well, thanks very much, Isabelle, for the second interview, and we'll see you again another time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. You might remember from a few segments ago I had discussed some of the music that I've been sitting on for a few years that was commissioned for an indie film. And due to a number of factors, COVID being a big one, switching of the editing team, footage being lost or corrupted, all kinds of problems outside of my control. The film has been postponed and delayed and rescheduled a number of times. And as the last update came through, I was told that it was slated for release in March. So that's exciting, it's coming up. But what's exciting for me is that finally, the music I've been sitting on for a number of years is going to be out in the world. There have been some developments on that front, and they're good ones this time. Not, hey, another delay, another postponement, but good stuff. When I had last updated you on this, I had sent out the tracks for mixing, and I had received a few mixes back, and they were pretty good. A couple of hurdles and stuff, jumping between different software. So I record in a program called Logic, and the person who is mixing, my buddy Tim, uses Pro Tools, and sometimes those two don't play very nicely together. But we managed to figure it out, and he sent me some mixes back, and they were all hunky-dory. And then it was time to move on to the next step, which is mastering. It's a dark art, the dark art of mastering. But the long and short of it is, a mix takes the raw tracks and instruments and polishes it up so that they all balance well. In the sonic space, they all have their own spot, so nothing is competing with anything else. That in it itself is an art form, and Tim's really good at it. Mastering goes a step further and takes this refined mix down of the tracks and really polishes it. This is where we get a little of a volume boost. Sometimes this is where some brightness is added in, some warmth. There's a lot of really nitty-gritty detail stuff that happens in the mastering phase. It's well outside of what I know how to do, which is fine by me because that means I get to work with cool mixing and mastering engineers like Tim or Zach or any number of others. Since it's my music and I can do whatever I want with it, here's a preview of one of the tracks entitled, "It's Not All Bad." So, yeah, it's not all bad. I'm looking forward to this indie film coming out so that I can share all the music with you. But for now, that's all I've got. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
I am with Jason Schreurs, who's a fellow punk rock lover like me. Jason's actually going to be interviewed on a couple episodes of our show, but when we were chatting, I was saying, what about move that body? What do you like to do to move that body? And he said, mosh pits. So I'm like, oh, we got to talk about that on Move That Body. So welcome, Jason.
Hi there, John. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. So first of all, why don't you just tell people what a mosh pit is and what do you do?
Wow. Yeah. So picture a bunch of people running in all different directions, banging into each other, jumping onto each other. It's just complete chaos. Yet it's very controlled. It's not a contact sport. It's an activity that involves a lot of contact.
And is it always at concerts or can you just be at a bar playing music? How does it work?
I don't know. I've never seen one just like break out at a bar. That might be a little bit sketchy, but yeah, no, concerts are definitely the place. And, it's been happening since the very early days of punk rock. It became a thing where people went from what's called pogoing, which is jumping up and down on the spot, to then banging into each other, and which eventually became slam dancing. And of course, that comes with all the other things that people see on the TV with the crowd surfing and stage diving and all that. But I don't know about a bar. I wouldn't go to a bar that had a mosh pit unless there was a band playing.
How tiring is it? I mean, because I know, for example, if you go to a punching bag, I know it's a completely different thing, but people don't really think of going to a punching bag as much aerobic, but you get tired pretty fast. So what about in a mosh pit?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've seen people stumble out of the mosh pit, grasping their chest, trying to breathe, sweating profusely. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of exercise. Again, it's like playing football or rugby or something like that, but it's just a dance, basically like a glob of people bouncing around. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I've come home from shows just completely wasted, physically wasted. Yeah.
The concerts I've gone to, they go on for quite a while. So I can't imagine being in the mosh pit continually. You just kind of slide in and out, or you just take it easy at times.
Some people stay in there the whole night and they're just the warlords of the mosh pit. Some people just go in when they want to during, let's say, their favorite song or until they get tired. It can go whatever you're comfortable with. They call it a mosh pit because there's a big, huge opening in the middle of the floor. The band's playing front of stage, and then you've got this opening with people moshing inside that opening, like an open circle with people running around in it. And on the outside, you've got all the buffers. So if you're in there and you're running back and forth, banging against people, it doesn't take much to feel like you're getting slugged quite a bit, but in the most friendly way possible, honestly. It's a relatively safe place to what you would think it would be.
I'm not really a mosh pit person, but maybe a little bit when I was younger here and there, and it was more in fun. You're not trying to smash people to hurt them. It's more you're bumping in a way that's more fun. So if I asked you, what do you get out of it, or how does it make you feel? What are some of the things that come to mind?
It's just like an endorphin rush. It feels out of body in some ways. It feels alive. You feel really alive when you're doing it. It's exciting. It's punishing. It's like when you do like a marathon run or something and you're punishing yourself, but you know that it's going to be worth it in the end. And you've got this amazing soundtrack going at the same time. So you're exercising, but you've got this huge, immense sound that's rattling through your body. And, there's not many exercises you can do where you've got this like bass just pounding you. So it's kind of it's the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine how it would really enhance the concert experience. And then I can't help but ask, because we have a little segment of our show called Adventures of the Starving Artist, and Cameron is our artist, and he's a kind of a smaller guy, and he was at a concert once, and he was on the edge of the mosh pit, and for whatever reason, this guy decided that Cameron must want to be in it, and so kept banging into him, but Cameron didn't want to be in it. So, what happens if, do you find that people kind of draw people in, or do they leave people alone if they don't want to do it?
Depends on how close you got to the pit. That's
kind of your risk.
Maybe he was too close to the pit.
Okay.
One of the etiquettes, I don't know if it's an unspoken etiquette or not, but the etiquette is that, you stay out if you're going to stay out, and you go in if you're going to go in. And if you're around the buffer zone and you kind of catch the wrong direction, someone's going to shove you into it. And not because they want to hurt you, or because they want you to be having fun. Someone will fall down, and instead of people just continue on with what people looks like could be like aggression or whatever, they'll stop and they'll pick the person up. Or if someone's shoelace is untied and they've got to bend down and tie up their shoes, people are just like, okay, let's buffer this guy. Don't worry, you got to tie up the shoe. It's very it's very cool, and it's it can get rough, and sometimes people get hurt, and there's always going to be a jerk that's just there to cause trouble or even hurt people. But 99% of the time, it's just a lot of fun and a lot of bruises.
Well, I'll be sure to tell Cameron to stay a little bit further away from the heart of it. And maybe that's the answer for him next time. So thanks a lot, Jason. That's amazing. I'm glad you enjoy moving your body that way, and hopefully you keep doing that for a long time.
We'll see if the hips hold out.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. This is another in the kind of pop-up series on breakthroughs I'm having on my theory I'm developing as I'm talking to guests and learning more as part of this podcast. I recently talked about Covey's 4 quadrants, and on a show not too long ago, I was talking with Sammy on the What's on Your Mind segment about a spiritual facet activity. I mentioned that the concept of building blocks is helping. It ties in with Sheila's dance balance analogy, which I love talking about because I think it's just such an amazing analogy. And the analogy Sheila gave towards trying to get balance, and I now apply it for balance in life. Hers was balance in dance. That when she was young, she sought to get balance as a dancer, thinking that that would mean that she'd be able to hold a spot, hold a position with strength, and to keep holding it. She realized quickly that you don't really ever stop moving as a dancer. You're forever, as you're moving across the stage, doing a dance move. In the process, you start to lose a little bit of balance, and then you use your technique to regain balance, and then you do another move, and there's this constant process of starting to lose and regaining balance. The way that building blocks fit into it is the moves. So in the process of continuously doing dance moves, if you start to go off balance, you don't have time to stop and say, okay, I'm doing a turn, and now I'm starting to move a little too much to one side. What would my teacher say is the best technique to employ at this juncture? No, you don't have time for that. Things are happening way too fast. So what you have had to have done is, over the course of your dance training, you will have to have learned many different techniques. And I won't be able to list them because I don't know them. And these are all what I consider building blocks. Each one of these techniques is there for either your conscious or your subconscious mind to employ it to prevent you from losing balance and then regain balance. And that's what all the facet activities are. And that's why I love this analogy to building blocks, because we identify consciously what activities foster wellness in each of our areas, and then we work to develop them. And it takes time. But there will be a time when, going through life, something happens and we start to lose balance. And without possibly thinking of it consciously, those building blocks are there. Those activities are there. And they can kick in, and it prevents us from falling totally off balance and might even help us to regain balance. So the facet activities, they foster wellness in different areas. They're building blocks. They're available. They can help us either maintain or regain balance. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
So today, John, I'd like to talk about episode 51. When we did this interview, I just thought it was amazing. And I actually had quite a few conversations about it and quite a few questions. So I thought we could talk about it.
I would love to talk about the fact that you think one of my interviews was amazing.
It was. A lot of your interviews are amazing, John. I really like them.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. How amazed you are. No, I'm just teasing.
I'm amazed by your guess.
I'm making a joke because on the podcast, I often listen to Marathon Talk.
Yeah.
One of the hosts, Martin, had done an interview. And so he was talking to Tom, and he talked about how it was a brilliant interview. And he obviously meant, because the guest was brilliant.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
But for the rest of, for weeks and weeks and weeks, Tom would always bug him about, oh, sure, your interviews are brilliant. So it's just kind of an inside joke for me.
That is really, really funny.
It was.
Okay.
Right. So just to put it in context, we interviewed Reverend Jessica Purple Rodela, who's a Universalist Unitarian minister. She's atheist. And she was talking about a story about Hosea Ballou, but generally the principle was to be good for goodness sake, not to be good so that you don't go to hell.
Yeah. And actually, I had someone ask me that question. What does that mean, to be good for goodness sake? And it does seem to be something that we relate to children more. You better be good for goodness sake. But I really live by that principle, just to be good for the reason that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and she said that tongue in cheek. She was just kind of kidding. She was trying to make it understandable. So she said, think about Christmas. We say good for goodness sake.
Yeah, but it's really makes sense, right? Why wait in this long line of getting on the exit where everyone else is butting in, 2 cars before? It's because it's the right thing to do. Wait in line with everybody else. Just that kind of philosophy. I think if we all lived by be good for goodness sake, it would really help our society.
Well, I'm going to break that down a bit though, because I studied ethics at university all those years ago. And there's really many levels to this good for goodness sake. Okay. So you're talking it actually about a slightly different level.
Okay.
Right? So, and I just want to say too, before we start, it's important. Okay. When we talk about religion, we obviously love this interview. And there's lots of interviews we'll really love when we talk to people of different beliefs. And when we're doing the show and when we're having these interviews and these chats, we are not testing beliefs. We're not trying to say one is right, one's wrong.
Right.
We're asking people of different beliefs about them. And it could be, you know, what does this holiday mean?
Right.
And the reason we're doing this is so that we can better understand their perspectives. Plus, I have this goal. I'm going to just say what my goal is. My real hope is to find underlying commonality between all of us.
Right. Which there really is.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
That we have similar hopes. We all want to take care of our family.
Yep.
We all want to be safe.
Uh-huh.
We all want to be free.
Happy. Yep. Yep.
There's all kinds of things we share. And I hope that we're going to see that coming from all these different beliefs. Okay. So now coming back to my original point, which was you're almost talking more about something people call intuitionism.
Oh, okay.
I'm oversimplifying. But for some people, they just say, look, I just know it's right, so I do it.
Right.
Okay. And that's kind of what you're saying.
Yes.
I just know it's right. I don't think I don't think our goal should be that everybody thinks the same about ethics. People can approach it from different perspectives and beliefs.
Right.
But I do like to think that we're going to be good in similar ways because there is kind of an underlying set of traits. There's kind of a moral compass that I think we all share.
I think so too, like a certain respect. Okay,
but hang on. The good for goodness sake that she was talking about is more specific. She was saying there's a lot of people who believe and who say the reason why they do good things is because they don't want to go to hell.
Right.
The good for goodness sake there is I'm not doing good because I want to avoid going to hell. I'm doing good because it's good.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, that you don't always want to do good because there's a benefit to yourself for being good, if it's going to heaven or whatever your benefit is. But you should do good just because it's the right thing to do.
Well, that's interesting. And that would be maybe a moral theory. And we could debate that. But I think the more important point is, again, like I don't want to get caught up on, you're saying you should do. I don't want to get caught up on telling people what they should do. What I'm saying is I personally think people should try and think about doing the right thing. And if it's intuitive, that's fantastic because you and I mean, that's something in our relationship throughout.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to think about it from this perspective and that perspective. And I come up and say, we should do X. And you're like, we should do X.
Yeah.
So again, like, I don't want to tell people the shoulds. I'm just saying, like, just because you have a belief, maybe you believe in hell. Okay. That doesn't mean that you have to put that on everybody else around you and think that they can't possibly have a reason to do good.
Yeah, because they don't
believe in hell.
Right. So what I'd like to ask is just a few questions because of time. So what's the difference between atheism and
agnostic?
Agnostic, yes.
Yeah, so atheists have a positive belief that there is no God.
Right.
So if you said, is there a God? They would say no. If you're agnostic, you're not sure, you don't know. So if you said, is there God? An agnostic would say, maybe, I don't know.
Right. So,
I don't gravitate towards one, but I'm not saying that I'm not going to disprove it.
Okay. Now, what's the difference between Unitarian and Universalist?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
And in fact, like, a couple times I was kind of fudging my questions because I wasn't quite sure.
Interesting.
I do know that from what Rev Jess said, some people who go to her church believe in God and some don't.
Okay.
I think she said it was about 50-50. I'm not sure.
And the last point I want to make is I love the idea that spiritualism, somehow the word breaks down to breath, that we all breathe and connect. And I just really loved that philosophy as well.
And you're taking that because, just to kind of give us context, we just went back all the way back to episode 16 and listened to Rev Jess's first interview.
Yes.
Which gave more information about the perspective. Yeah, and I do too, because what I really liked about that is one of the things I struggle with the most in my understanding is how somebody can be atheist.
Me too.
But have some concept of spirituality.
Exactly. I can understand how someone could be atheist. That's
right. Not
the problem. It's how they can be atheist and spiritual at the same time.
And so when Rev Jess during that first interview was talking about things like connections, so connections into space, down to the ground, because we're all connected to the universe. We're literally made of stardust, she points out. And also connections side to side, like person to person. And what I like about the concept of breath is that's physical, it's real. Like you can see there's something coming in from the outside, it's nourishing you, and then you're breathing it back out. So yeah, there definitely are connections.
Yeah, so love the interview. It was a lot of Very good interview there, John.
Well-
you are amazing.
Very funny. But actually, what I love about it was you came home and said people were asking you questions about it.
I
And
know.
that is amazing. I just
We're
love the
talking.
fact that it's got people thinking, because there's nothing I like better than people thinking. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It is sign-off time, and I'm here with Sheila and Sammy. Hey, guys.
Here we are. Hi.
So I had a really busy work week, but one thing I really liked the interview that we aired today with Isabelle. I thought it was really cool to hear from a university student. She just said things in a really good way. Like I just liked the phraseology she used and the thoughts that she had.
Nice.
So I try and do one run of at least 10 kilometers every week. And I've got this streak that's really long, but I keep lately making the same mistake, which is leaving it till Sunday, which is the last day I can do it. Always scares me because you never know, right, how you're going to feel that day. Luckily today I went to the gym and did it inside on a treadmill. And for whatever reason, sometimes the treadmill, it's really hard for me. But today, luckily, it felt really easy. So that was a huge relief.
That's good. And how long has your streak been going, John?
The last anniversary was 6 years. So I'm working on 7.
Wow.
Yeah. I call it my rebirthday.
Oh, okay.
So my next rebirthday is mid-June.
Okay.
Thanks.
So how about you, Sammy? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I had a busy weekend just hanging out with friends. So a lot of social time, which was really nice to see everybody. I feel like I haven't seen a lot of people in my friend circle in a while. So it was nice catching up.
Nice.
Today we went and saw David's grandpa. He lives in the Dune Village, like community home. But they're in outbreak right now. So he can't really leave the premise. So we just went with Lexi and took them on a little walk, just like around the building, just to see him. So it was nice. It was nice to see him. I think it's really good for him to get out, and he's feeling great. It's kind of the rules of the place that if they're in outbreak, they have to stay in. But yeah, he gets visitors quite a bit. So it was nice seeing him.
That's good. Very nice.
Yeah. And then me and David are watching a really good show. I don't know if you guys are watching it, but it's called The Last of Us, or have you heard of it?
I think I saw something, but I can't really remember. Is it like one of these post-apocalyptic type things? Yeah,
it is. And normally I'm not really about that. I'm not about this post-apocalyptic, but I'm
kind of a sucker for that.
It's like a little close to home, honestly. But it's really good, and the characters and the acting is really good. So the new episode comes out tonight. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
So you're staying up late.
Yeah.
Staying up late.
Yeah.
I am excellent. I actually had a few things happening this week. I went to the Allure Mill for a spa day. And that's the first time I've done that. So that was on Friday that I did that. And I spent 5 hours there. And it was so lovely because Friday was really, really cold. And at the Allure Mill, the pool is outside as well as the hot tub is outside. So you kind of have to go from in your bathing suit, in the freezing cold to get in the pool. But it was so much fun. I really, really loved it.
Pretty sure that's officially a first world problem. That you have to be cold while you're getting into a hot tub on spa day.
It was fun. Anyways, so I did that on Friday. John and I went to his mother's on Saturday and had a lovely dinner there. So we've been busy doing social things as well, and it's been lovely. So I've been working hard and partying hard.
All right, let's keep that rolling. Work hard, play hard.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, I hope everyone enjoyed the show and has a great week. Remember to think about wellness, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
Sounds good. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.